Well, back in the 60s, I chaired one of the state women's organizations. And at that time, we were aware that the governor was not appointing anybody to the state commission. There had been an early commission set up by President Kennedy in '62 for 2 years, but that commission went by the board in essence and was not alive until our legislature passed a law that said there would be such a commission. By the time 1970 came along, Governor Peterson was not appointing that, and so a group of us women who represented different women's groups came to his office and said, look, what's happening? We would like the commission to be activated. Carolyn Gross, at that time, we were talking with, his assistant, came and said, well, you appoint 5, suggest 5 to the governor, and he'll appoint the other 5, which makes 10. So that's how we got started. And it was a time, how we got started reflects what the time was. People are politically afraid, to stand out too much. For myself, I came to the commission, we were meeting in the governor's office, and I sat there as one of 10 people. And then Carolyn Gross came in and said again, please, would you decide who you would all like to be the chair, and the governor will appoint that chair. So we kind of smiled and said, okay. There was dead silence in the room. At that point, Jean Hennessy from the Charitable Trust, who was a member, spoke up and said, Carol Pierce, you're the only person who doesn't have a full-time job. I nominate you. And I sat there and thought to myself, well, as a typical woman, I might say, oh, well, I think we should let other people. And I decided to say nothing. And I said, maybe this is my time as a woman, and I should just be quiet. And so I did. And at that point, I became the chair of the commission. The commission in its work had to reflect the historical time. And in that time, there was a lot being said by women who were in the protest mode. As chair of the commission, we decided we had to do some listening. And we listened to the women in the protest mode, we listened to the women in all kinds of parts of their life. And so we went throughout the state. I think we had 15 hearings. And we would just put a notice in the newspaper and say, come, listen to, come and hear. We want to hear you. The Commission on the Status of Women would like to know what your life is like right now. We went from Berlin to the University of New Hampshire, to Laconia, to Keene, to Manchester, to Concord. We went every place we could think of. And the women showed up. And they talked and they talked. And out of that, we wrote several reports. One was on credit. One was on being a police officer. And it was interesting. I didn't know what to call the report for that one. And so I called up a sheriff in one of our southern parts of the state, and I said, are you hiring women on your police force or your sheriff's right now, anybody in that area? And he paused and he says, I've never even seen one. So that became the title of our report at that time on police. I've never even seen one. So it was that beginnings and the kinds of things that we felt important in that time, I think at a historical time, to start just listening to women. The other thing we did was tried to set a precedent of getting as many women into the State House. Now that's through being elected, but it was also through conferences. Liz Hager chaired several years where we said to every woman in the state, what do you represent? Come to the State House, we're going to have a big conference, and what do you want to have a session on? And so we did that. And women just came. We would have maybe 400 or 500 women who would show up for a Saturday day. And it was a time that out of that grew quite a few women's organizations like the Counseling Center and the women's clinics, health clinics. Those were all started at that time. So it was very exciting for us. So it was something that I look back on very proudly for the number of women who came in and were with us at that time, who started, I think, much of what has happened in the state since then. Right now, what really excites me is the younger women who are stepping forward in our culture and doing something about it. I don't get excited by the many women who say, well, it all happened and it's over with. We don't have to worry about it anymore. And I'm hoping that they see and look at what their mothers, maybe their sisters, their aunts, the people in their family had to fight for, and to listen to what it is we may be losing in the culture.